James, welcome, brother. Um, Thank you so much for saying yes to this conversation. How are you today?
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a real honor to join you and to discuss some of the more beautiful things of what it is to be a human. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I wondered if you could just start with just, I guess, a quick introduction. Who are you? Where are you currently based? And what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm joining you from the Sacred Valley here in Peru. So we're nestled into the mountains. I'm speaking here from the house we've just built. Um,
Awesome.
and yeah, there's a beautiful waterfall there. Um, there's two beautiful mountains behind me, Apu Pitusirai and Apu Sawasirai. They're considered like the female and the male energies of this valley. And so it's a very, very beautiful place. I feel very honored to call this place home. And yeah, you're about a day in the future to me.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, beautiful, man. And yeah, what's some of the work that you're doing in the Sacred Valley?
well, my wife and I hold retreats here in the Sacred Valley. We're very blessed to be working with a beautiful teacher from the Keros people,
Mm.
Don Fermin Kespe. And yeah, the Keros people, way back when colonialism happened, the Spanish came, they climbed high, high up to the mountains, above 5,000 meters. And so, the Spanish were like, we're not gonna climb that for a fight. And they did that to hold the wisdom, they're real
Mm.
beautiful wisdom keepers. And they're the descendants of the Incan royal family. And so they held on to this wisdom, this earth-based spirituality. And yeah, and so we feel very, very blessed because, they've held that wisdom, and it's only in the recent, last couple of decades they've begun sharing this wisdom.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, and so, over a time of cultivating this relationship as we land here, and um, it's so, so beautiful. It's so, so alive. And, um, the conversation never stopped between people, the mountains, nature, and spirit. And so that conversation, that dialogue is palpable as you walk in the mountains. And um, yeah, and now, Don Fermin Kespe has honored us to be godparents of his son, and so we're
Wow.
deepening this relationship and continuing these initiations high up in the mountains with him, and so we hold retreats with him, and we work with a medicine called Hauchuma. Many people would know it as San Pedro. It's a beautiful, sacred cactus medicine that grows in these mountains. And so that's some of the work we do here. And my wife has an astrology school, and I
Mm.
teach people and guide people how to become lucid, how to become aware within their dreams. And yeah, and once you open that door, once you become aware within your dreams, so much becomes possible, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later. Um, yeah, and I have been training with a wizard lineage, the Merlin lineage, and it's an energy healing modality called Vortex healing. And
Wow.
so I also offer energy healing to people, distance and group healings and things like that. Um,
That's amazing, brother. And I think there's a real blessing within our karma when we end up in an actual lineage, like a wisdom tradition that has a deep lineage, like you're speaking to. As you're saying it, I can just feel the beauty of it. This earth-based spirituality, like that's amazing. And I'd love to dive more into that. I think what I'd love to start with is what you just mentioned with this idea of lucid dreaming. It's such a unique modality, and I'd love to dive into this. And I'm wondering, what were some of the, I guess, initial experiences that you had in your life that kind of led you in that direction to kind of going towards like dreams and this kind of work?
yeah, well, for me, interestingly, it's not like I sought out wisdom traditions that cared about their dreams. It just so happened, that each of the wisdom traditions I've studied with and been devoted to have all had a lot of reverence for their dreams. And
Mm.
I feel like that's partly because dreaming is just natural. It's completely
Yes.
natural. And so around the world, indigenous cultures and wisdom traditions have all sort of like, they've just leaned into that a bit deeper, like what's possible, you know. And and so I guess if it started for me when I was a kid, and of all of the shamans and amazing monks and great dreamers of the world, I would still say the best dreamers are children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so a lot of the practice actually is about rekindling that within, that sense of awe, wonder, curiosity, sort of before a lot of conditioning started to impact us as we really desired to belong. And so there's an innocence to the practice. When I was a kid, my parents said that they would come into my room and I'd be standing on my bed just playing the air guitar asleep.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I do remember that dream. I was like in this boat in the middle of the ocean, and there was a massive speaker, and it was a reoccurring dream, and I was playing like Jimi Hendrix, and it just felt so good. Um, and it's interesting dreams because they're not always literal. It's like the language of the soul, and so it's better to tune into the feeling and the energetics often for the real treasure of what they behold for us. And for me, I feel like I had a real sense of freedom, and I
Mm.
had this open sense of expressing myself purely. Um, I never did learn to play the guitar very well, um, but I feel like I followed that golden thread of what that felt like, on that
Yes.
boat in that dream. My whole life I was like, there's more. Surely there's more. And, when I grew up in a town that somebody wrote a book of the worst, crappiest towns in all of England. And the town I grew up in came number one. And so, it was easy for me to think there's more, in a way. And
Mm.
there was lots of, there was challenge in that, violence and all sorts of experiences that made me think, there is more. And it led me on a healing journey. Um, I looked around as a kid, probably around the time I was having these dreams, and I noticed in adults, like, they all thought that what they were thinking was true. And I thought, this is interesting because they don't all think the same thing. And so I was very critical from a young age. Like, hang
Yeah.
on a minute. And then some of them are more content than others. And so that struck me as like a young teenager. It was like the way in which we think and engage with life is very, very, very important. And not everything you're told is true. So like
Absolutely.
how do we uh, how do we find this sense of discernment? I was so
Yes.
curious about it, and it led me to studying psychology at university and to study the mind, the invisible of the mind, and that was interesting, but it just didn't quench the thirst. I knew again there was like there's more. And yeah, and so that just led me on to well, eventually I found a temple in northern Thailand, where they were teaching meditation, and
Mm.
that was my first glimpse of what is possible.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You know what it reminds me of is actually in the Buddhist tradition, there's a concept of the 10 stages of the ox, where there's the farmer who's kind of going about his day and he just kind of senses that there's something else. Like you were talking to, we sense that there's more to this life. There's something really special to learn, but we don't quite know what it is. and then he sees the ox up the valley, like he just sees the tail out of the grass, and so he goes into the long grass and starts to like look for the ox. And then eventually he sees the ox and he chases it up the hill and tries to wrestle it, and it's really hard and there's all these challenges, and eventually he can like ride the ox back down the hill back into the village. And you could say that the ox is enlightenment, you could say it's your own mind. There's lots of different analogies there, but that metaphor just came up in my mind, and it's interesting that it was the meditation practice that you learned. I'm wondering, what were some of the other trainings or initiations that you've been through on your journey that really stick out as far as like, yeah, what's developed this wisdom that you now embody?
Well, yeah, initially it was that first experience in that temple. You know, I had no idea about meditation. I'd never meditated before, and then I was going, right, 10 days, you know, like a Vipassana meditation. And I was such a scallywag from the town I grew up in. I had this long hair, and I was so clueless that I even went into a hairdresser's the night before and said, listen, I'm going to go and live with the monks. I think they're going to shave my eyebrows and my hair off, and so let's just have some fun. And so they put the curlers in, and I got a perm because I thought they were going to shave it off the next day. And I climbed the big steps up to this amazing temple. It was above the clouds, and yeah, when I arrived, they soon told me, we're not, you know, you're only here for 10 days. We're not going to shave off your hair. And for me, you know, and then I remember them asking, so why are you here? And I was like, well, I'd like to learn how to levitate. And they just saw me coming and were like, this guy, he's got a lot to learn. And you know, the first few days I was just like, I'm such a wally with my permed hair, and I found it very, very difficult. You know, it was like, for me, what I recognized, you know, that the ox for me was like, I could see very clearly through so much of my conditioning, and you know, and so I'd learned to play the game of being a human, how to interact, and all of these things, and then I was suddenly confronted with that some of that was made up, you know, and I was just, to some degree, it wasn't even me. Even the bits that I thought were my best bits, I had to admit to myself it wasn't even true.
Yes.
And so that was very confronting and hard. You know, I was in tears for those first few days, and then it was like, I don't know, the sixth or seventh day, this temple was on the mountain above the clouds, and for the first time I sat and meditated, and it was just effortless. It wasn't a struggle, and my alarm didn't go off. I ended up meditating for about 2 hours. I opened my eyes as the sun was rising, and then this big, beautiful butterfly was just flying by, and it was like I'd never experienced anything like it up until that point. It was like I could hear the wings, I could see the detail in the butterfly as it flew, I could feel its heart, and it was like time just stopped, and then tears again just streamed down my face, but it wasn't suffering this time. It was just absolute awe, and from that moment I was like, okay, so this is, whatever this stuff is, it works, and I need to do more of it because it's so beautiful what's possible. And so I guess that was an inspiration, and then I sat many silent retreats, Vipassanas, which is
Beautiful.
an amazing training for that stability and awareness, I guess. And I trained in Tibetan Buddhism in northern India, and you know, was given a name, went for refuge, and was very devoted in the Tibetan Buddhist path. And you know, there's a strong tradition there of dream yoga,
Mm.
and it's such a beautiful map and path. And I was very, very grateful to meet incredible teachers, the sort of teachers that can really help you to laugh at yourself. And
That's very helpful, isn't it? Yes.
I think so. I think, you know, it can get very serious, you know, the spiritual path, and I think a sense of humor is very helpful. Um,
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly because this is really beautiful. The main foundation that I have in my own spiritual path is a foundation of Tibetan Buddhism through a lot of teachers here in New Zealand. Thachin Hearn, Namgyal Rinpoche, these people traveled the world, and yeah, Thachin always says precise and playful. Precise and playful is this kind of analogy for how we can hold ourselves. But I'll let you continue your stories and some of your trainings and stuff.
oh yeah, I love that. I just felt that
Mm,
precise and playful. Oh, it's
that's
juicy.
good.
My
Mm,
teacher, one of my teachers, this is His Holiness Gangri Karma Rinpoche.
mm,
But he would say a brilliant teacher at just making you see the ego. And but what he would say to me was, um, "Don't be so serious, but be sincere." And
yes.
that difference of just like it's just be earnest. You know, if you're earnest on your path, the path is about truth. So,
Yes.
in order to find truth and to feel that, to embody it, we just need to be honest.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. That's what we need, right? We don't need so much these incredible spiritual attainments. It's about radical honesty. That's really what we need, eh?
yeah, yeah, and so that's that. I love working with people that have that same earnest approach to their path because not all of it's easy, you know. Some of it's really hard as we really meet ourselves and the tender parts of ourselves, the places we've really pushed down, or those wounds and that hurt or the shame, and so to access that, sometimes it's really helpful to have that sense of humor, that playfulness about it. But we also need to be honest and very sincere.
Absolutely. And you touched on the dream yoga in the Tibetan tradition too. Was that kind of what opened the door to the lucid dreaming path, or was there something else that came along after that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, it was about 5 years um, that I was very devoted onto the Tibetan Buddhist path, and I still am. Like, I'm so grateful for those, and I still have connections with the teachers and the practices. But I was sitting one meditation retreat where I saw in myself this honesty thing, where I was like, oh no, I realized how proud I was to be a Tibetan Buddhist. And I saw it so clearly, and I was like, "Oh no!" And and there was a great teacher, um, Pema Chodron, by the
Children,
way.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so I remember her talking about don't fall in love with the vase, like it's
Mm,
all about the nectar inside the vase. And so from that moment, I was like, I can't call myself that anymore. As much as I
yes.
practice it, it's just like, just walk towards truth, whatever that is, in the moment. And so my path took me to Guatemala, and there's a mystery school there where they study more the tree of life, Kabbalistic teachings, um, beautiful place where you stay in your own pyramid, really ancient teachings like from like ancient Egypt, beyond
Wow.
that, Atlantis and things like this. And so it was very magical how I ended up being in this place, which is a very long, a whole podcast in itself. Um, but we would do meditation, we would do yoga, and we would study esoteric teachings, and then the real teachings happened every night when we went to sleep. And
Wow.
so this is where, with the Tibetan Buddhist practice, I did meet teachers and receive different transmissions, and it had very beautiful experiences, but it shifted. It was like, from the mystery school perspective, it's an initiatory path. So it's like you're going through initiations in your dreams. And not only that, there is a place where you can study. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, there's a real address in the astral, this place called Macrath. And so we would go to this place to study. And for me, I was just like, this is ridiculous, I finally found Hogwarts. But it was powerful, very, very powerful. And so, we were silent for 40 days and we'd continue to
Wow.
study and learn here. Um, what I love about this practice and why I love teaching it is because, whatever is alive in you, whatever you're passionate about, is is what comes alive in your dreams. And so what I was studying a lot of was plants. Like I've always been a gardener and love trees, plants, and so it deepened my relationships with things like basil, with rosemary,
Mm.
in like the real subtlety of like plant communication. It just it it just opened a whole new door for me in terms of uh, understanding myself as nature and you know dreams are sometimes you get a great idea, sometimes you can even see the future in dreams, prophetic dreams, and but I feel like a lot of dreams are just an energetic education. So like they're guiding
Mm.
us like where to come from or how to
Yes.
meet the world. And for instance, people talk about guides. There's a white horse that comes into my dreams from time to time, often in times of like when life's feeling a bit stressful or chaotic, and like building a home in Peru is not an easy thing.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so like in moments of that, when it was getting a bit out of hand, this white horse would come in my dream, and instantly I can't put it into words, but I've just like incredible respect, like very, very humble, come into my heart. And so lots of the dreams are just guiding us to do that, like come from this place, meet the world from here.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's beautiful. There's so much there to unpack, and I love that. I love that detailing. It sounds like an incredible journey in the mystery school, silent for 40 days, doing that kind of work. That's incredible. I wouldn't mind reading this little passage out of this book. This is from my teacher Tachin that I mentioned earlier, because preparing for this podcast, I remembered there was some stuff about dreams in the teachings from my teacher, and he says. The person who aspires to understand their conditioning must pay attention to dreams. They are messages from the depths. In a sense, they are aspects of yourself that are saying, look at us, realize we exist. Dreams are a powerful tool for the totality you, which help you bring about integration. They are a part of the natural pull of your being towards wholeness. Remember the word arahat, and you might know the word arahat. It's kind of like a stream enterer, but there's also an aspect here of no secrets, and through dreams, your hidden hopes and fears are presented to the light of consciousness. I thought that was a beautiful little passage there. And I guess the question I was going to ask is, what is the what is the function of dreams? You kind of already answered that in your own way, which was beautiful, these messages that we're getting. I guess moving from the interpretation of, actually, let's go with that. Like, how do you interpret a dream? Like, when you know that it's something in the unconscious that is revealing itself to you, there's some integration that needs to happen, there's a message from the depths. How do you interpret that?
well, beautiful questions, and wow, that's so incredible what you just shared. Like my heart just glowed.
Mm,
It's just truth.
mm,
And so thank you for sharing that. And yeah, well, I feel like with dream work, a lot of it is about trusting the process.
mm,
So first of all, if we begin to care about our dreams and we pay attention, there is this beautiful process where our inner masculine and our inner feminine, they begin to hold hands, the yin and the
mm,
yang. And so if you think of the masculine as the conscious mind or like the sunshine, and then the feminine as the unconscious, like the moon, and and often it's almost like there's a big river between the two, which is why many of us forget our dreams. It's very common. um, and so if you just say for for a consistent period of time, I care about you, dreams. I'm here. You have my attention. I'm
Mm.
listening. What that's the masculine saying that to the feminine within, and so just by doing that, so much healing happens. Like
Yeah.
nightmares begin to cease if people have reoccurring nightmares. Uh, what happens is you tend to remember more dreams, and you're creating this bridge where the masculine and feminine hold hands. And the feminine within us is like going, like you're listening to me. I feel heard. Like I feel
Mm.
seen. And for 20 years I've been studying different healing modalities, and honestly, one of the most healing things any of us can feel is to be
Yeah.
fully felt like we're understood and seen, and like I feel you, you know? And
Absolutely.
so we get to do that to ourselves. So already, forget interpretation, just the process of this creates profound healing and wholeness. Like, instead of this like fragmented um, it, experience of our conscious and unconscious mind. And then they begin to open incredible doors, like gifts, this is really what you're ready to heal, James or Kyle.
Mm.
Like you,
Yeah.
and so the gift arises, like there's a ripeness and a readiness, you're paying attention, so let's do this. And then fruit that, like, in terms of the mystery school perspective, the alchemists, the door towards the philosopher's stone to this awakening path is that. Let's go where it hurts. Let's meet
Yes.
those parts, bring them home, so we feel whole. We use such an incredible amount of energy, and we don't even realize we're doing it when we're suppressing things and holding things down. So as we begin to heal those, that vitality becomes available, and we can be
Yes.
more authentic. We don't have to wear a mask for work, for family, for friends. It's exhausting, and so
It is exhausting. Yeah.
yeah. So this path of like authenticity is amazing. We begin to feel more whole. Um, sorry, I feel like I went on a tangent. You asked about interpreting
No,
your
no,
dreams.
sorry. I did want to say it's something I've been contemplating because I am a holistic lifestyle coach. And so I teach people about nutrition specific to you and real hydration and specific movement patterns that you need to integrate into your life and getting good sleep and having clear values and goals and all that kind of thing. But a lot of the time, what's actually creating the fatigue and the tiredness that we're experiencing is the masks that we're wearing and all these old stories that are weighing us down. It's like sometimes we have a belief that it has to be hard, or that I've got this problem going on, this constant challenge that I have a cord connected to it, and it's an unconscious blind spot, and that blind spot is robbing us of so much energy. It's an energy drainer. And so I love what you were speaking to as well, like going in towards these blockages that we have within our the totality us, the unconscious, and the vitality that comes out of that too. Yeah, so that's incredible, and I love the masculine feminine analogy. That's really beautiful too. I guess the next transition here is like lucid dreaming feels like this whole other thing where it's not just interpreting or sensing the dream or allowing the dream space to actually become something that we're tuning into and saying, I care about my dreams. I actually I want to start to be involved and let this into my life. But what is the definition of lucid dreaming? And then how do people start to learn how to do that?
Great. Yeah, beautiful. And yeah, it's amazing you're a holistic lifestyle coach. That encompasses so many things. And it's
Mm,
beautiful that, because so much of the world has become reductionist. Just look at this.
yes.
And it's
Yeah.
amazing when you can give people support from a wider angle because it's all connected, as you clearly know. And what I love about guiding people for lucid dreaming is it requires exactly what you do, Kyle. You know,
Beautiful.
it, it, in order to, in order to sleep well and to dream well, you have to care about all the things that you're sharing. You know, you have to
Yeah.
eat well. Exercise improves your sleep, also improves your capacity to be lucid. Anything that requires the left and right side of your brain is very conducive. Um, Hydration is essential. Like all of the things, which is why I love it, because if you begin to open a door to lucid dreaming, it keeps you in alignment, you know, with all of those
Mm.
other aspects in which you teach, because you know, spending a seriously wonderful amount of time in nature will
I love
really
that
help
one.
your dreams.
Yes. Yep.
It's,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so yeah, just to speak to that, lucid dreaming is when you're in a dream and then you realize you're dreaming. I'm dreaming. And for most people, like everybody's had a lucid dream. Everybody. And so if you've ever had an experience where you go, shit, I need to wake up because it's a scary dream, then for a
Mm.
split second you knew it was a dream, and so then you woke up. Um, you know, as people begin the process of like realizing you're dreaming, often it's so exciting, like so exciting, and it feels amazing. Like just to have that experience, you can feel like incredible for the whole of the next day. And but often because you're like, I can do anything, which is kind of true. There's infinite possibility here. That's quite a lot to handle. And so,
Mm.
you know, I liken it to surfing because I've never been very good at cool sports, and especially surfing. I tried, and for a short period, and I'd get on the surfboard and be so excited that I'd just fall straight off into the sea or the ocean. And I think that's the same for people as they become lucid in the beginning, you know.
Yep.
So what does it take to stay on the surfboard? Well, composure. So
Mm.
it's like you need this enthusiasm. Uh, you need an exclamation mark to become lucid, to care about it enough, often. But then cultivating composure is what means you can stay lucid for a longer period of time. And the longer you stay lucid in a dream, well, then you can ask very, very deep questions. You know, a lot of people that teach lucid dreaming around the world, I see, it's just like you can control your dreams and you know fulfill your greatest fantasies and all these things. And yes, like lucid dreaming is amazing. It's incredible. You know, like 10 million times better than Netflix or anything like that. But if you stop there, you're missing you're missing the big picture and what's possible, because there's huge potential, as you've spoken to, for your own evolution, to know thyself, to become
Mm.
whole, and then moving beyond that, you know, as I alluded to before, like guidance, inspiration, like what is my path, what is my purpose, um, and so lots of these things become possible. And you know, where people speak of control, like I don't quite resonate with it.
Mm.
It's not quite like that. I think it's more healthy to feel like you're co-creating.
Yeah, it
Uh,
feels like awareness. It feels like becoming more aware, you know? It's interesting too because it reminds me of martial arts. I'm a long time Muay Thai kickboxer, and I was a coach for a long time. And so one of the main keys that you learn through experience is is composure, is how important composure is. You know, and I tell my guys who have only had one or two fights, I said, look, if you'd have had 10 fights, you would realize that the most important thing is keeping your composure. It's staying balanced, it's staying calm, it's staying present, you know? So how do we start to keep our composure in the dream space?
well, there are many tools that we can use, and what's beautiful about this as a practice is, you know, it's not a practice just for your dreams.
Mm.
I would just want to give maybe a question back to you, Kyle. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, like, what other words do you think of or feel when you hear the word lucid? Forget dreaming.
Yeah, it for me it's like this. It's almost like an open focus. It's like an eyes open meditation that's not foggy. It's like a panoramic peripheral kind of clear, almost like crystal clear kind of seeing. Yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that
yeah.
description, almost like a Dzogchen meditation, eyes
I love
open.
Dzogchen. Yeah, that's a part of my practice is the eyes open Dzogchen style. And yeah, just that's a great question. Yeah, because lucid, it's quite a potent word, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love that the way you just because I often ask people it, and I ask because it's that's what you want to cultivate. So we're
Mm.
cultivating it not just for dreams, but in our waking state. So I usually teach people over 3 months, and one of the biggest things people share is I just didn't realize just how much my waking life was going to change, you know? And
Mm.
so it's that as above, so below, as below, so above. So you're cultivating what you just described. For me, lucidity is like presence. And I think
Yes.
presence, like I spoke about with the butterfly, uh, that's whole path in itself. It's like the difference between, people, if you did a stare out competition or eye
Yeah.
gazing, you know, like it's not, presence isn't just like being really sharp, it's about uh, this quality, the quality of your engagement with what's unfolding in the ever present moment. And so it also to do with like who are you? Like are you
Mm.
just this physical body or are you looking like for is your heart like engaged in what you're doing? Is your soul engaged in what you're doing? And so it's like this like huge
Yeah.
cultivation of this quality of engagement, like a mystical engagement with life. It's like whilst we're deeply present and heart to heart with the person we're with, or a tree, or an animal, maybe that there's an inkling within our awareness that everything is connected. Like
Mm.
we're a part of this beautiful planet, this living, pulsing planet that is within the cosmos. Like there's an inkling within every interaction that wow, there's like wow involved.
That's the path, man. That's such a beautiful description. That's the path in my mind, and this wonderment of seeing the butterfly, like that description of like piercing in enough veils to realize that it's all magic, and to just be in such a state of like, wow, this reality, like it's so incredible. And like you said, the tapestry of interconnectivity that we can feel and we can sense. And as you were talking about that, I just had this image pop into my head of like I did a 2 week silent meditation at the start of this year, and there was this conversation around formal practice and informal practice. So we have our formal practice where we're actually sitting and doing the practice that we were given. And then the informal practice is everything in between. It's like walking to the dining hall, waiting in line for the soup. How do you pour your tea? How do you walk back to your hut? When are you like drifting? When is your mind drifting during those little moments and you're going back into fabrication, back into illusion? And how long can you actually just be here in a really simple way? And now feeling into the dreamscape, it's like even to be present throughout the whole day, but then we're switching off and becoming completely unconscious for 8 hours. But it's like I'm seeing this kind of like 24-hour stream of like constantly being present and engaged with life. And man, that's such a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, I wouldn't mind reading this out. There's a study that came up, and I think I sent this to you actually. It was the study around what lucid dreaming can do for PSD, Eric Godse, and here it is here. The intervention was only 6 days, and 63% of the participants didn't just lucid dream during the intervention, but had a lucid dream that significantly reduced their PTSD symptoms. So this is actually coming through with some of these studies now as well. I guess the question would be like, can you comment on that? Have you seen any similar studies, and what are some of the other, I guess, success stories that you've had with teaching people how to go about this, not just lucid dreaming, but this lucid living?
Yeah, wonderful. Well, it's wonderful to see the science happening because it's become more possible through neuroscience, and so
Mm.
um, and it's really important because then it's moving it into more mainstream therapies. It's been used for phobias for a very long time. To meet your fears, your phobias, and things like that. This study, what they actually found of those that learned to lucid dream in this very short time, 85% of the participants stopped showing signs of symptoms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's veterans.
Wow.
It's extreme trauma that we've experienced in childhood, and I'd never in my life seen a figure so high for something as PTSD. So
Wow.
it's incredible. And so all of us we all have our mountains to climb and our obstacles and our challenges, and so maybe we don't have PTSD, but it shows you that there's a huge door open for us to heal in that process. There's loads of studies happening now, like there's a huge potential for neuroplasticity within lucid
Mm.
dreams. They call it a hybrid state of consciousness. Um, so, your prefrontal cortex begins to reduce, and this is like logic, organization, your sense of self. So also perhaps you could say your sense of ego to some extent. With this
Mm.
reducing, in dreams, some areas of the brain increase by 30%. And so
Wow.
in terms of what that means is so much becomes possible. You know, that's why you can access the shadow, you can access these unconscious parts of yourself. It's also why you can find solutions to problems, like very practical solutions. Building this home, the amount of solutions I came to, just like how we're going to insulate the roof, I just floated up in my dream and worked out how we were going to do the insulation. The periodic table came through dreams, the blueprint for Google, the sewing machine, like
Wow.
changes humanity forever. So it's very good for the inner work, for spiritual connection, remembering who you are, but it's very pragmatic, as well. I've seen studies recently in rehabilitating people from after strokes because of this neuroplasticity through lucid dreaming. Um, there's another study where they're studying all these authors around the world, and those who learn how to lucid dream, like what they're creating is just incredible. It's like I don't know how they measure that it's more creative or not, but
Yeah.
somebody with a PhD has worked that out. And so I love to see the science catch up, but as you know, for the lineage that you're working with, and it's just known for thousands of years, and so it always makes me laugh. Like recently, like turns out forest bathing is good for you, spending time in nature. Well done, science. Thanks for catching us up.
Well, that's it. I see the same thing with the technology, and oh wow, these phones are really damaging our attentional system. And it turns out if we have long bouts of focus, it's really good for us. And it's like, well, that's what the Eastern philosophies have said for thousands of years. It's the training the attentional system so we can come back to our natural state. And it's like things have to get really bad sometimes before we get back to the basics. And I love what you're speaking to with the potential for transformation with something like dreaming that we all share, that we all do every single night. We go into that space. So actually having some mastery over that space is, like you said, there's now evidence of how profound that can be for people. And
Yeah,
it makes
well,
so much sense. Yeah. I'd
Well, you
love to get
mentioned
into. Oh, sorry, you go. Yeah, you go.
the your history of martial arts. One study also, uh, these guys they all stopped practicing in the waking life, and I don't know what kind of kick it was, but they were practicing a kick in their dreams. They were all told to do this, and all of them massively improved the kick just through practicing in their dreams. And so that speaks to like this neuroplasticity. When you dream, the same neural pathways are functioning as if you're doing it in waking life, whether that's knitting, whether it's rugby, whether it's martial arts. And so, it's also a huge, you have this healing process, but you also have this like thriving process. Like,
Mm,
yeah, like human
yeah.
potential, like the very name of your podcast. I love what you've called it and what you're exploring. And 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 so as I said before, whatever it is you're interested in, that's what's going to open out for you. Um,
Yeah.
I've been teaching for 7 years, and it's unbelievable what's been happening for people. Healing like really tense relationships with parents or relate this huge healing for that. Coming to terms with death. I've worked with many people
Mm,
that are facing their death, that are coming close to their own death. And as you know from a dream yoga perspective, a lot of this lucid dream practice is to prepare for your death. If we can become aware that we're dreaming, we can also become aware at the moment we move into the bardo at death. And if we can do that, then they say we have a huge potential for our awakening and enlightenment. And so it's good to have a good motivation for this practice. After teaching it for 7 years, what I've noticed is as soon as the person finds the right question, that's when they become lucid. You know,
mm,
and so,
mm.
and I feel like it's the same with life. All of it's applicable for your dreams, for your waking life. But when you begin to ask the right questions, does the world support you?
Oh, I love it, brother. That's so true. I went through a process yesterday with a friend. We had some hard stories that we were working on, and so we would write the story out on a page, and then we would practice reading it out really slowly with breathing, letting the nervous system feel it. But I needed to get the right question first. I needed to get the right question of like, what am I actually writing about in the first place? What's the question? Not just like just writing for the sake of it. And I love this idea of neuroplasticity. And it was something that I would do in my martial arts teaching is, because we can only train for a certain amount of time every day. But if you really want to upskill yourself really fast, then use the mental rehearsal. Just mentally rehearse the sequence. Slip two, roll two, three, low kick, something like that. Do it in your head over and over. And it's just going to be natural. You're firing and wiring those neural pathways. So I love everything that you were saying. I wouldn't mind going into some of the more like mystical realms now that you can actually access, and you've spoken about accessing, actually going somewhere, maybe to like some kind of Hogwarts higher dimensional university, and can we actually attain knowledge in that space and bring it back into our waking life, and what does that look like? Because that's like, now we're getting into something that people would call magic, right?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like life is magic. So if that's the foundation, then for sure. Uh, and so yeah, I guess a good way to speak about this is beginning with prophetic dreams, like dreams of the future that then happen. Um, this isn't reserved for me or teachers or very special people. I don't believe anyone's more special than anyone. It's completely natural, and if you get yourself a dream guide, this is my very fancy lucid dream guide.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, it's like age 3 to 4.
Yeah.
And so if you begin to write your dreams down, you begin to notice how many dreams you've had of the future.
Mm,
My wife and I, when we first met in Guatemala, we both dreamt of being deeply in love with one another. At the
Wow.
time, I was very much monk mode, about to go into the 3 month retreat, 40 days silence, and my wife had been, on plant medicine dietas for years, so was celibate, and so there was no like we're looking for a relationship, and so I walked her home after this big ceremony at this Las Piramides meditation place, and I got to her hut because it was a little bit dangerous where she had to walk home, so I just walked her home, make sure she was okay. And I think she was thinking, I hope he's not going to ask to kiss me. And she just goes, in the end, she was just like, do you want to come in and have a look at my crystals? And so I awkwardly, we're both English, it's quite a classic that we're quite awkward. I awkwardly went in there and we meditated together. Beautiful meditation.
Mm.
And we both felt this like helix experience as we left our body. And then I awkwardly left after that. And, at the time I had a really intense mullet haircut as well. So I joke and say she definitely didn't fancy me.
That's an epic first date. That's an epic first date, man.
And so, yeah, I just went on my merry way. That night, she dreamt of us being in this garden. And, this is very recent that we become stewards of this land and that we were talking of a love she'd never experienced in her life. And she was just like, that's weird, surely not that guy. I think she traveled to Latin America to find a beautiful Latin American man. And so she found me. But anyway, then I had a dream and I saw Gaia, my now wife, and it was her eyes, but her face was completely different. And in my dream guide, it just said, Gaia, and tears are rolling down my face, and it's just like it's so good to see you again.
Mm.
And so I'd totally forgotten about this, and then I went to the mystery school. My dreams at the end of that, I said, thank you so much. It had been such a profound experience, and I was just like how can I help? And we speak about good questions. It's a good question I think we can ask on planet Earth right now. Like how can I help? And
Mm.
but
Mm.
if you get the answer, then you've got to do it. So we will. And so my dreams just said, go back to that town that I told you of, where I grew up, and I hadn't been there for 9 years, and I was just like, no way, I'm not going back. I'm never going back. And then every single dream said, go back and then start community vegetable gardens. And so eventually I listened, I went back, and everything happened like in the dream. I worked with refugees from Africa who I saw in the dream, and homeless people, and then kids that had been expelled from school, and abandoned pieces of land we just turned into such beautiful gardens and to grow food for the community. And so then that was my mission. And then it was 4 years later that actually Gaia came back to England, and then we caught up with the dreams and fell deeply in love. And so, you know, for me, it was really important to then look back at my dream diary, because I was like, I've built a whole life here, and I fell in love with my identity. Community gardener James, saving the world with vegetables. Like, and so I really loved that identity. And then so it was like, move to Peru, and then so I was like, I don't want to leave, and I'd have to start all again. And I read my dream diary of the time of like, Gaia, of when we first met, and it made me have enough trust to follow my path. Um, and so, countless people throughout the 7 years I've been teaching it have prophetic dreams that are just incredible.
Wow.
Um, One of the beautiful things that can happen, I'd mentioned about how we can come to terms with our own death, and that's been a
Yes.
big part of my journey. Like when I lived in England, I volunteered before work. I worked in a university for a while, and it began to get very office based, and I was like, I need more meaning, and so I began to volunteer for a charity that it would receive calls for people that were suicidal or in great distress, and so it was like a counselling. And so from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. I'd be on the phones there before going to this office, and that whole process really, it really transformed me. Like really meeting death and those that are some people that just wanted somebody to speak to as they took their life as well. And so it just got very, very real, you know. And I feel like the more real we get about death, that's definitely going to happen. So many of us are walking around like it won't happen to me. I'm
Yeah.
definitely not going to think about it. But if we
Mm.
like actually like ponder that, like in a meditative way, in a real way, and sometimes life will do that for us, you know, through loss and
Absolutely. That's another Buddhist thing as well, is like if you're feeling like a lack of energy, it's like contemplate impermanence. Contemplate your own impermanence, and I love it because there's a directionality to spiritual growth, like we want to care for one another better. We want to be more real and less bullshit. And there's usually an orientation towards service. And like I just love that question that you asked before, like how can I help? And if you get an answer, you got to stand under that. Like you realize that's your path, and if you know something to be true, then that's the integrity, that's the responsibility, is to stand under it. And I think a lot of what we can do right now at this time in history is to look after the earth, know our food sources, bring community together, like come together through the basic fundamentals that a lot of people don't even have. So that was a beautiful story, man. And I wouldn't mind transitioning to some of the other work that you do with plant medicines. I did a podcast, I think 2 weeks ago, with a guy who teaches the microdosing of psilocybin mushrooms. And we had a great conversation around how that can help people, and yeah, just the incredible spirit that the mushrooms have. And I know that you work with Hauchuma, San Pedro, and I've worked with this medicine as well, and I love this medicine. But I would love it if you could maybe just speak into like what is the Hauchuma experience from your point of view, and like what can that do for people as well?
yeah. Well, we're so blessed for the plants, all of them on this planet, and one of the very beautiful plant medicines that grow here in the mountains, Washuma. You know, to put it into words would not do justice to what this
Mm.
cactus can do for us. Um, However, you know, I also love what's possible with psilocybin and mushrooms, and you know, it's amazing how this is becoming legalized around the world in various places for depression and various um, therapeutic uses and recognized as
Mm.
such. I feel like where mushrooms has this playful, more like pixie um, energy, I feel like Washuma is like very, this divine intelligence is very much bringing us back to our heart.
Mm.
And so as we come back into the heart and have this heart perception, heart coherence, uh, what begins to fall away is a certain degree of rigidity. Like this is the way
Mm.
the world is, you know, which is a danger of becoming an adult. And
Yes.
so, you know, I feel like a lot of the past is like remembering that innocence, that awe, the wonder of being a child. You know, it's most humans somewhere deep in their consciousness have a sense of being an imposter. You know, there is a
Mm.
pressure as you
Mm.
grow up to have it all figured out, or at least appear that way. And but there's so much freedom in mystery. You know, I
Yes.
love in some traditions they even speak to that divine or the source or as the great mystery. And so if you're in a place of wonder and curiosity, I feel like you can get a bit closer to
Yeah.
mystery. And
I
so
love
as this
that.
rigidity falls away, for me, Wishuma, invites a sense of seamlessness, where we
Mm.
it's very, very conducive to being in nature. So it's a medicine you would walk in nature here in the mountains. It's not a nighttime medicine like some medicines, and uh, you know, when you sit with a tree, you remember that it breathes, which is just true. It, the trees breathe, and that's what we're breathing, and so it becomes deeper than that. Like, to what extent am I nature? Am I a part of this web of life? And and in that, we relax more and more into who we truly are, and we
Mm.
can let go of like the image of who we think we are, and all of those things that make life feel very difficult. You know, my teacher Don Fermin Kespe here from the Keros people, he is incredible. Like what I've seen, miracles happen with these despacho offering ceremonies and prayers, and the healings that I've seen. Incredible. One of the most powerful healers, shamans I've ever met. Also, one of the most humble men I've ever met. And for me, the path should be equally that. You know, it's as equally as humbling as it is empowering. Because the power isn't ours. It's not ours alone. It's like if you become seamless with nature, if you really connect with the elements, with earth, fire, water, air, like really feel how they play out in your body and how that is what everything is made of, connecting with the ether that is the life force weaved within all of it, then you don't need to be powerful. You just relax into that power, that wave that's already there, and let that move through you. And it's
And
just,
yeah,
it blows my heart wide open, and I'm so grateful for the osmosis of being with Fermin and just witnessing it so effortless, you know.
absolutely. And it's really hard to relax into that wider field when you're really busy being like a robotic person who's got it all together, right? Like I just like this releasing into what you truly are, which is more than a separate self. It's part of this interconnected universe. That was so beautiful, man. That was really a poetic description of not just Hauchuma, but almost like a meditation in itself. So thank you so much for that.
Mm.
You mentioned earlier as well a Merlin lineage that taught you some of the other healing work that you do. Could you speak a little bit into that as well?
Yeah. Well, also before we moved on, I was also speaking about death, and you was asking
Mm.
about some of the other higher dimensional experiences of the astral.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so maybe I'll speak to
please.
that first, and then I'll speak about Merlin and the Vortex healing lineage. So,
Beautiful.
um, one of the most beautiful things that's happened to many students I've worked with and myself is connecting with people who have passed, who have crossed the veil. And, you know, one thing that happens when you dream is that you access the unconscious. So you can access memories of people. Sometimes you can have dreams of past relationships, you know, and they're like often archetypal representations within your unconscious. For me, a huge healing process for me was around the masculine. Like growing up, you know, having a rough experience where it wasn't so composed like the martial arts, the beauty in that process, it was pretty raw and street. It wasn't just that for me, but I was like, I didn't even realize this was an issue. And you speak about blind spots. I didn't know I had an issue with the masculine. I just
Mm.
walked around as a teenager and younger 20s, like around men that was in position of leadership or power, and I would just go, he's an asshole, or he's an egotistical dick, and it was just my reality, and I thought that was true. Sometimes it was true, sometimes it was true, but a lot of the time it was just because I was hurt and I was scared. You know, I had a
Yeah.
wound around the masculine, and so my dreams begin to have these archetypes: PE teacher, da da da, these different people from my past, until it became obvious that it was. I went, oh, James, they're not all assholes. They're, maybe there's something that you're a bit scared of, James, here. And so I began to inquire and look at this within myself, and it was like, oh my goodness, you're terrified. And so within my waking life and with my dreams, I began to heal this relationship to the extent where, I could have incredible male mentors. I've made incredible male friends now, part of which was this Merlin lineage and my teacher in Ireland and permaculture teachers, and it all became possible where I would have just avoided it. I
Mm.
also recognized that for me it was also a fear of stepping into a position of leadership. And so beautiful healing over a few good number of years that meant my life completely changed. I mention that because figures were coming as archetypes from my unconscious. What's also possible is to actually meet people in your dreams. So, like the night my granddad passed away, my Irish granddad, he came to me in my dream and just said, James, I've had enough. And I knew what he
Mm.
meant. And then he came and hugged me. We didn't do that in his lifetime. And then we played a game of dominoes. We used to play dominoes, this game. And we had this last game, and the whole game in this dream, like I was like, I know that you're dying or you're dead. And it was so profound. And I
Mm.
think he let me win that game. But I couldn't put into words just how moving it was. And then I woke up the next day, and my mum said, "Your granddad uh, died last night." And lots of people that I know and have had various different experiences of meeting people that have passed over, where it's definitely been them. It's not just a figure of their mind. Um, I've had many situations where I've connected with people who, in the mystery school there were 5 of us, an Irish guy, 2 girls from Australia, um, one from America, and the Irish guy, Tony, we'd get up before we did the 40 days silence and we could talk at breakfast, like, "But what was your dreams?" And I'd be like, "Tony, last night he was teaching me about tarot in my dreams." And then he would open his book and go, "Was teaching James about tarot in our dreams." And
Whoa.
what? So it's not always just of your unconscious. That's more an astral travel experience. And so what was interesting about that was Tony would be like, "I didn't even know about this. Like I was learning as I was teaching it."
Wow.
So so in
Yeah.
dreams you're not just connecting with like the challenges of this life or the gifts of this life, but you're connecting with your soul, which has had a very, very, very long journey. And so that was what was emerging obviously in this retreat. Um, in that retreat I remember as well, one night just like looking down at myself, and I was floating above myself, and then I just held my own face, and I'd floated outside my body literally, and was holding my own face, and up until then I believed that I was more than my body, but to have that as a direct experience was like, it shifts your relationship with death and who you really
Absolutely.
are. It's like it's not a belief anymore. I know that I'm more than my body, and so these are just like small experiences that give an inkling to that. My my big sister, she's had a real hard relationship with alcohol,
Mm.
and it got really rough for a while where we could barely talk. It was like intense, violent, and was living back in England, and I was so sad, because I love her so much and couldn't communicate, and so but I was having these dreams where we were talking heart to heart, and it was just I was like, oh, that's so healing for me, just so we can talk, and then she went into rehab, and when she was in rehab, you can't phone anyone when you're in rehab. We were having these dreams where we were in this garden, there was a white bench, and we were just sitting heart to heart, beautiful conversations, like soulful conversations. And she came out of rehab and she called me instantly and she was like, James, so many nights we were just in this garden by this white bench, and I was just like, wow, it wasn't just me, you know, we were both actually there. And, you know, which speaks to, you know, you don't have to go to a mystery school, you don't have to go
Mm.
to India or Peru.
Yep.
Like, this is available to all of us because it's natural. And so, and yes, the possibility of learning. I've received lots of teachings, like from the Tibetan Buddhist. It was like, wasn't even in my language. It was just like transmissions, which just felt energetic,
Yeah.
you know, like Sanskrit coming through, or you know, and just like impossible to put words to. And you know, it's the same. Like when I teach people how to, you know, we go around the medicine wheel. We begin with grounding, connecting with plants and the earth through dreams, and then we go into the air element in the course I teach, and that's where we begin to practice flying. And you know,
Wow.
I do it because it's really fun. It feels really amazing. But the real reason I do it is because it's an energetic education. Like in order
Yeah.
to fly really well in your dreams, I feel like I'm gifted, you know, in that the source of my dreams, for some reason, whenever I'm flying in a dream, I'm flying like a baby duck. Like really, really badly flying. And so it always makes me laugh, which is a good key for this practice, like we said. It becomes not of the mind more embodied when it's funny or and so like and then I go, you could fly like a badass, James, it's your dream. But to do that, I have to come into my heart. Like I have to come into a place of center. The breath,
Mm.
just like you teach, is like it's the same in dreams. If you can, it's like you can breathe a sense of luminosity into your
Mm.
presence, and then that's how you fly really well. It's how you do many things really well in the astral. Um,
Yeah, incredible, brother. Yeah, I love that. Your connection's a little bit in and out, but I can hear you. Just letting you know. But keep going, please. I guess, yeah, maybe touch on that particular Merlin lineage as well, and like some of the work that you've learned through that.
Beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, I've when I went back to England to begin the community gardens, it just kept coming to my field. Merlin, Merlin in my dreams. People I'd meet, books on shelves, and it was very obvious that it was important. And I ended up going to a festival at Buddha Field in England, and there was a healer there that said from the Merlin lineage, and I was like, got to do this. Lovely guy called James also, and he said, "Is there anything you want to focus on?" And I was like, "Well, I really injured my knee. You know, I was really badly in football, which meant I couldn't play football anymore. Changed my direction in life, which I'm grateful for now, but at the time it was difficult. And
Mm.
and so I went in. I'd had this pain for 3 years, 4 years. And I said, I've got a bad knee. And then I just lied on there and he did the healing. And then that was the last time my knee hurt. And I was just like, wow, like
Mm.
that's, whatever this is, it works. And for me, although I've had quite a mystical path, you know, mystery schools and wizard schools, my dad's an engineer and I grew up in a rough area in England. And so my approach to spirituality has been very like quite critical, you know,
Yep.
or like where I'm like, does it work? You
Yep.
know, let's cut the bullshit or just like the fancy ideas and let's do the practice and then see,
Yep.
does it work? And so for me, energy healing at the time, I was like, no, definitely not. It's just nonsense. And so although I trained in different things because I do like to try them. I tried Reiki and it was quite powerful for me. And Shahulaka was another method. And but this, you know, it fixed my knee, so I was like, it's worth paying attention. And slowly over time, I had some other healing sessions, and it began to help me with some more emotional things that I've been working on for some years. And so yeah, I began to inquire more, and so I've been studying with them for now 7 years. Um,
Mm.
very in-depth energy healing modality, very experiential. I'm interested in direct experience, and so it's like being in a plant medicine ceremony for 10 days is the training. Um, so you're receiving healing, energy healing throughout, which shifts your system so you can be more like a hollow bone or a garden hose.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and you can work with epigenetics. It's like for us to come into creation, into this life, this incarnation, we have like this river that is our soul's journey, you know. Uh, and then there's this other river which is our ancestry and our genetics, and then they come together in just like the perfect mess.
Mm.
For
Wow.
us
Yeah.
to evolve, it's like, it's so interesting how the ancestry and genetics mix so perfectly with the soul's journey and what it is we're here to do in this life, to heal or to evolve. And so with vortex healing, you can follow those threads to work with epigenetics, and you can follow the other threads to begin to bridge more truth. The way it
Yeah.
works is it's like a vortex that like keeps going deeper and deeper, and almost like tickles you. There's like a sense of humor in the process that goes, "Really, James?" And then as it bridges more truth of who you really are, some of these programs and conditionings just naturally fall away. So for me, it's been huge for me to uh, relax more. I experienced
Mm.
a lot more social anxiety. I've been working through various programs and conditioning ever since I've been with the lineage, and I work on myself every day with the modality. So I'm very,
Oh,
very.
that's amazing. It
Uh,
reminds me of my friend. My friend is a angelic Reiki master, and she teaches the training and stuff. But for her, she doesn't really identify with the term angelic Reiki. It's more about just being able to channel into the truth of what's going on for that person. And actually, a lot of what comes up for her is the ancestry. It's the ancestral lines. It's what's being held in the body, in the unconscious and stuff. So, man, that resonates heaps. Brother, this has been such a phenomenal conversation. I can't wait to listen to it back and take some notes. And this is what I'm realizing just doing this podcast. I've always wanted to host a podcast and get interesting people on and share it with the world. But what I'm finding is I'm learning so much, and I'm finding these missing keys or different richer views on things that I've previously already known that's helping me. And this has definitely been one of those conversations. So, yeah, it's been such a pleasure, man. I guess I would love to finish with like, where can people find you? How do you work with people currently? What are some of the things that you've got going on like now in the work that you do?
yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Kyle, and yeah, I would love to do a podcast asking you questions because I can feel you hold and embody a lot of wisdom. And so
Thank you,
thank you for
brother.
your
Thank you.
presence and yeah, just a genuine, grounded, beautiful presence that you hold. It just makes it so easy to talk. And so I really appreciate you and everything you're doing. Um,
Likewise.
yeah, and so in terms of getting hold of me, you can connect with me on my website, awakenacademy.org. My wife and I hold retreats here in Peru. Um, so we hold retreats with these initiations, the Carpe initiations of our teacher Don Fermin, high up into this mountain called Apu Alzangate. And they're like vision quests where, well, I couldn't even begin to put it into words what happens, but it's a process of strengthening the spirit and remembering who you are. And
Mm.
yeah, we're just so blessed to be in a position where we can receive teachings from Don Fermin and also the plant medicine Hauchuma. Um, I just recently, this last year or so, I had quite a few students for the Lucid Dream course I teach over 3 months. I teach this online, but a few people came from New Zealand and Australia, and they were joining me at like 4 in the morning because of the time difference. And so for the first time from the end of September, I'm holding this course at a New Zealand friendly time. So that'll be on Sunday mornings, if anyone wants to learn how to do this for themselves. I also hold one-to-one Vortex healing sessions that are very, very deep and very, very specific. You know, you can work with Vortex healing to a specific mitochondria or the telomeres or a specific organ or an emotional challenge, and I really appreciate the specificity of it and just how transformational it is. So yeah, if you're curious to work with me, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, awesome, brother. And I'll put some links in the description when I post this on YouTube and Spotify and stuff. And I just want to give a big shout out to my friend Sam, who put us in connection. She's done your lucid dreaming course, and she said it was incredible. And she was like, man, you got to interview James. You guys would have a great conversation. So yeah, thank you, Sammy. You were so correct. Thanks for creating the connection. And yeah, maybe we can jump on another time in the future and do this again. So just wishing you all the best on your journey, brother. And I might have to jump on that course myself one day, because this has been very interesting and sparked a lot of stuff in my own mind. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, I really hope we can connect in person sometime as well. Maybe in New Zealand. I'd love to visit sometime. So, and you're welcome here if you ever fancy the mountains of Peru.
I do. That's been on the list for a long time. I've been very blessed to work with certain shaman that came to Aotearoa, New Zealand, but I've always wanted to travel. So, yeah, now I have a place in mind. So, thank you again, brother. Cheers.
Thank you, Kyle.